James Carter rose with the sun, the rhythm of the countryside now guiding his life instead of the rigid commands of war. His farm was modest, a stretch of green fields and a weathered barn, but to him it was paradise. Each morning he walked the rows of crops with quiet pride, hands brushing over the leaves as though he were caring for old friends. He had fought battles across the world, seen chaos that left scars deeper than the eye could see, and yet here, in the soil, he found peace. The neighbors knew him as more than just the quiet man on the edge of town. When families struggled, James always showed up with baskets of vegetables or cartons of eggs, never waiting for thanks. For him, giving was a way of healing. The land didn't just feed his body, it fed his spirit. Children in the town often waved as he drove his old truck, their parents whispering about the man who had served his country and now served his community. James never spoke much about his past as a Navy SEAL. The weight of those memories was his alone. But what people did see was a man of honor, someone who had traded a life of violence for one of cultivation and kindness. His farm was not just a home, it was a symbol of second chances, proof that even in the aftermath of war, a man could choose to sow life instead of destruction. The evening air was heavy with the scent of fresh earth as James loaded crates of vegetables into the back of his old pickup. He was preparing another delivery to the local food bank, humming softly to himself, when the sound of tires crunching on gravel broke the calm. A group of men stepped out of a car, their swagger laced with menace. James recognized them as troublemakers from the nearby town, young, restless, and hardened by bad choices. They circled him like predators, mocking his quiet ways and his reputation for giving food away for free. "Why waste all this on strangers?" one sneered, shoving a crate off the truck so the tomatoes spilled across the dirt. James stayed calm, his voice steady as he asked them to leave. But kindness was something they couldn't understand. Their insults turned to threats, and soon fists followed. James tried to defend himself, but the years had slowed him, and the numbers were against him. Blow after blow landed, until he crumpled to the ground, the world spinning. The gang laughed as they left him bruised and bleeding in the dust, his crops scattered like fallen soldiers on the field. Lying there, James clutched at the soil with trembling hands, his chest heaving. For the first time in years, fear crept back into his heart, not for his own life, but for the dream he had built, the farm that meant everything. With what little strength he had left, he reached for the phone in his pocket. James' vision blurred as he fumbled with the cracked screen of his old phone. The world around him was quiet now, save for the distant echo of the gang's laughter fading into the night. His body ached, but his spirit refused to break. With shaking fingers, he scrolled through the names until he found the one he hadn't touched in years, a number saved under nothing more than the word Brotherhood. For a moment, he hesitated. He had promised himself never to drag his past into his new life, never to lean on the shadows of war again. But tonight was different. Tonight, he needed them. He pressed the call button, his breath ragged as the line rang only once before a deep, familiar voice answered. "Carter." The single word carried both surprise and concern. James swallowed hard, his voice low but steady. I need you." There was no need for explanation, no time for stories. The bond they shared was forged in fire, stronger than blood. On the other end, silence fell for a heartbeat, then came the response James had been hoping for, "We're coming." As the call ended, a wave of relief washed over him. The pain in his body was sharp, but the weight in his chest lifted. He wasn't alone. Somewhere out there, his brothers, the same men who had once stood shoulder to shoulder with him in the darkest corners of the world, were already moving. For the first time that night, James allowed himself to close his eyes, trusting they would come. The night grew colder, but James didn't have to wait long. Within hours, the sound of engines rumbled down the gravel road leading to his farm. Headlights cut through the darkness, and out stepped figures he hadn't seen in years, his brothers, his Navy SEAL squad. Time had aged them, but their presence was the same, steady, powerful, unshakable. They moved with quiet precision, their eyes scanning the land, taking in the bruises on James, the scattered crates, the bloodied soil. Not a word was needed. The bond between them spoke louder than any explanation. Together, they tracked the gang, their movements as disciplined as they had been in combat zones halfway across the world. Within hours, they found the men, cocky and laughing in the shadows of a rundown bar. But the laughter died the moment they saw who had come for them. Fear flickered in their eyes, but the SEALs didn't draw weapons, didn't raise fists. Instead, they closed in, cornering the gang until escape was impossible. One of the squad stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "You boys think strength is about tearing a man down. Let me tell you about real strength. It's about sacrifice. It's about carrying brothers through fire. It's about building something with your own hands instead of destroying it." The gang shifted uneasily, their bravado cracking under the weight of words delivered by men who had lived them. And then James himself, bruised but standing tall, stepped forward. His gaze was steady, not of vengeance, but of conviction. "You tried to break me," he said softly, "but you can't break what's already been through hell and chosen peace." The silence that followed was heavier than any threat. For the first time, the young men found themselves listening. Days turned into weeks, and the scars on James' body slowly faded, though the memory of that night lingered. Yet something unexpected began to take root. One morning, as he was tending his crops, he noticed two of the young men from the gang walking down the dirt path toward his farm. They weren't swaggering now. Their heads were lowered, their steps uncertain. James set down his tools, bracing for trouble, but instead of insults, one of them spoke quietly. We want to help." At first, James said nothing, his weathered face unreadable. But deep inside, he remembered the lesson life had taught him over and over: mercy can do what fear never will. So he nodded, handing them a basket. "Start with these rows," he said simply. Day after day, more of them came back. What had begun in arrogance and violence slowly transformed into respect, then into purpose. The young men who once mocked him were now sweating under the sun, planting, harvesting, and learning what it meant to build instead of destroy. The farm, once a place of solitude, became a place of redemption. James often stood at the edge of his fields watching them work, his heart swelling with quiet pride. His squad had come to his defense, yes, but it was compassion that had finished the fight. The farm flourished with new hands, but more importantly, so did the souls of those who had once tried to break him. James knew then that true strength wasn't measured by power or revenge, but by the courage to turn enemies into brothers. And under that wide American sky, hope had been planted, destined to grow.